It was never supposed to see the light of day. A deleted scene so disturbing, so cryptic, even Quentin Tarantino himself buried it in silence. What started as a whisper in a dusty video store would eventually shake Hollywood to its core. Behind the brilliance of Pulp Fiction lies a secret that could have changed the entire perception of the film. And it all began in Manhattan Beach, where two unknowns, Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary, spent late nights scribbling outrageous scripts between rental shelves and coffee breaks. One script in particular, Pandemonium Reigns, birthed a surreal sequence involving a pawn shop, a gold watch, and a man in a leather mask, one that would later become the darkest, most haunting portion of Pulp Fiction. But that wasn't the half of it. Tarantino didn't walk the traditional Hollywood path. After Reservoir Dogs, the town buzzed. He met Avary in Amsterdam, where they started splicing scenes together, literally taping segments onto each other's pages. But as Avary stepped away to direct Killing Zoe, Tarantino obsessively rewrote, finessed, and added razor-sharp dialogue. 2 years of creative intensity led to a screenplay that stunned audiences. They both walked away with Oscars for Best Original Screenplay, though Avary's speech was odd enough to be a Tarantino character itself. He thanked his wife, then awkwardly confessed he needed to pee. That night, their partnership ended. But the film's legacy had only begun. Pulp Fiction didn't just borrow its name, it resurrected it. The term Pulp Fiction came from the cheap wood pulp magazines of the late 19th century, packed with stories of crime, mystery, and adrenaline. Titles like Argosy sold in the hundreds of thousands, introducing readers to characters like Nick Carter, and creating a whole genre of raw, rule-breaking storytelling. That's the very energy Tarantino wanted. Unpredictable, stylized chaos. He wasn't just making a movie. He was paying tribute to a forgotten world of gritty heroes and twisted fates. But getting that tribute made? Nearly impossible. In 1993, Tarantino and Lawrence Bender struck a modest deal with Jersey Films. They got a cramped office and just enough cash to pitch the script. Columbia TriStar bit, then gagged. The script, they claimed, was the worst they'd ever read. Characters died, then reappeared. Humor was offbeat. The violence? Unapologetic. Executives hated it. Heroin scenes were considered dangerous. No major star was attached. They pulled the plug. That's when Harvey Weinstein stepped in. Newly partnered with Disney, Weinstein saw genius where others saw madness. Miramax funded the $8.5 million budget and handed Tarantino full creative control. They even shaved $500,000 off the budget by avoiding inflated actor salaries. Instead of megastar fees, everyone, famous or not, got the same weekly rate. And that gamble? It changed Hollywood. Nobody saw John Travolta coming. At that point, he was more has-been than headline. His days of Grease and Saturday Night Fever were long gone, replaced by talking baby movies and career misfires. But Tarantino had a vision. He wanted Travolta as Vincent Vega, and refused to budge. Weinstein pushed hard, offering Daniel Day-Lewis and Sean Penn. But Tarantino fought back. Travolta, once paid millions, agreed to just $140,000. That choice? Career resurrection. An Oscar nomination followed, and suddenly, Travolta was back at the top. Meanwhile, another storm brewed. Samuel L. Jackson thought the role of Jules Winfield was his, until he heard that Paul Calderon had nearly snatched it. Furious, Jackson marched into the audition with a greasy Big Kahuna burger, ready for war. One exec even called him Lawrence Fishburne. That mistake? A spark. Jackson erupted, unleashing Jules in full fury. The room froze. He didn't act. He was Jules. The Jerry curl wig, a last-minute mix-up, but it stuck. That performance made him immortal. Behind the scenes, Tarantino wasn't just crafting dialogue. He was building a blueprint for how modern independent films could survive and thrive. And while the script screamed chaos, the financials were clean-cut and sharp. The budget discipline of Pulp Fiction became a case study. Miramax's cost controls, equal pay, no ego-driven extras, and keeping the shoot tight, allowed them to focus on story and talent, not waste. Let's talk numbers. Tarantino's financial habits have always leaned toward long-term control. While he's known for flashy style, he invests strategically. Real estate? He owns properties in Los Angeles, a luxury penthouse in New York, and a private estate in Israel. No interest in personal jets. Tarantino prefers first-class commercial flights, reserving his cash for projects and property. When it comes to vehicles, he's been spotted with classic American muscle cars, like the 1964 Chevy Malibu from Pulp Fiction, which he personally owned. As for timepieces, he favors understated classics, often wearing vintage Rolex or Tag Heuer models, but avoids flashy endorsements. Tarantino's money doesn't just sit in savings, he's invested heavily into his production company, A Band Apart, and has multiple back-end profit deals tied to his films. Through smart ownership structures, he maintains creative and financial control, a move many directors envy but few achieve. Insurance-wise, he's been meticulous. Over the years, he's carried key man insurance on his name and his script, protecting himself against career disruption. Property insurance on his homes and production facilities is comprehensive. He's also known to structure policies around liability for stunts or controversial scenes, shielding himself and the studio from PR fallout or lawsuit. Ownership and control matter more than flash. Tarantino avoided unnecessary glam. Instead of blowing cash on private jets or 10-car garages, he focused on building intellectual property and maintaining leverage in his deals. For creators in any industry, that's a masterclass. As Pulp Fiction stormed theaters, it didn't just make money, it redefined the industry. Over $200 million at the box office on an $8 million budget. Awards, praise, and influence followed. It reshaped how indie films were perceived and financed. And yet, through all that noise, the missing scene, the one Tarantino deleted, buried, and never spoke of, remained lost. What's shocking is how this tiny, thrown-away moment mirrors Uma's real-life struggle in Hollywood. After Pulp Fiction, she became a cult icon, but it didn't translate into the kind of long-term megastardom many expected. She had critical hits, yes, Gattaca, Kill Bill, but she never became the industry's obsession in the way, say, Nicole Kidman or Charlize Theron did. Uma later confessed in a rare Vanity Fair interview that she felt frozen out after standing up to directors who crossed boundaries. She called it professional exile. It wasn't loud or obvious. It was quiet, and it was brutal, and it cost her millions. At her peak, Uma Thurman had a net worth estimated around $45 million. That's nothing to scoff at. But compared to her contemporaries who built lucrative brand partnerships, beauty empires, or production companies, Uma's financial trajectory stayed modest. Her real estate portfolio is centered around Manhattan. She once owned a $10 million duplex on Gramercy Park, sold quietly through a private listing. She also held a Hudson River estate worth $3 million and a Tribeca penthouse co-owned with financier Arpad Buson. The two had a rocky relationship and custody battles that often made tabloid headlines, but few noticed how those legal wars chipped away at her earnings and public presence. Unlike other Hollywood elites, Uma never flashed a garage full of exotic cars or wristwatches worth six figures. She kept it classic. Black Mercedes sedans, a Cartier tank watch, and vintage Chanel pieces she's worn on red carpets for over a decade. When asked about luxury, she once said, "I prefer the illusion of wealth to its noise." Still, her future net worth projections suggest a potential bump, thanks to her return to prestige TV, like her recent role in Suspicion, and behind-the-scenes producing deals rumored to be in the work. But while Uma was retreating, another name was exploding again: Bruce Willis. And not because of another box office hit. The news of Bruce Willis's diagnosis with frontotemporal dementia stunned the world. The action star who once ruled the 90s with Die Hard and The Fifth Element had slowly been retreating from public life. But what made the revelation even more emotional was how long his family had kept it quiet, protecting him from media frenzy as his condition worsened. Fans immediately began revisiting his classics, dissecting old interviews for signs of what he might have been hiding. But there's another layer here few talk about: the financial urgency behind his recent film role. In his last active years, Willis starred in over a dozen low-budget action movies, many criticized for being formulaic or beneath his talent. But insiders later confirmed that Bruce took those roles to secure financial stability. Each film paid between $1 to $2 million for just a few days of work. It was fast money to ensure his family's future. Today, Bruce Willis's estimated net worth sits at around $250 million. But his portfolio isn't just built on acting. Early in his career, he invested in real estate across the country, from a sprawling 22-acre estate in Bedford, New York, listed at $12.95 million, to properties in Idaho and the Turks and Caicos Islands. His real estate empire was worth over $50 million at its peak. He also once co-owned the Mint Bar in Sun Valley, and dabbled in music and fashion ventures that, while not wildly successful, kept cash flowing. One of Bruce's most iconic possessions? A Gulfstream private jet he frequently used during press tours. His car collection included classic American muscle, vintage Mustang, a 1968 Shelby GT 500, and newer luxuries like a Bentley Continental and an Audi Q7. But even as his health declined, Bruce's team ensured these assets remained in trust, set to benefit his children and wife Emma Hemming Willis. And then there's Tarantino himself, still Hollywood's ultimate mystery merchant. Quentin never confirmed what was in that glowing briefcase, but he did confirm something else recently. He's done directing after one more film. His 10th and final project, tentatively titled The Movie Critic, is already stirring up speculation. Who's in it? Is it autobiographical? Will it break every rule, like Pulp Fiction did? What's clear is that Tarantino has always played the long game. He's not just a director, he's a brand, a collector, and a master of narrative manipulation. He once owned multiple properties in LA and Tennessee, including a Bel Air mansion worth over $15 million and a historic movie theater in Los Feliz that he renovated to screen only films from his personal vault. His net worth, around $120 million and rising. But his true luxury lies in ownership of content, legacy, and unpredictability. He famously avoids social media, doesn't chase awards, and prefers vinyl records to streaming apps. He once turned down a multi-million-dollar studio deal just to retain full rights to his scripts. "I'd rather own one great film than direct 10 forgettable ones," he said in Cannes. Even as fans debate the soul of Marcellus Wallace or the blood spray in a Chevy Nova, Quentin's real trick might be this. He made ambiguity valuable. He monetized curiosity. And as he prepares to exit the director's chair, that mystery is what Hollywood may miss most. Which brings us back to the one detail that continues to haunt moviegoers. What was in that briefcase? Was it a soul, diamonds, Elvis's suit, or something else entirely? Or was it what Tarantino always intended, a mirror for our own obsessions? As Hollywood reckons with age, legacy, and the cost of reinvention, one thing is clear: behind every glowing case and every deleted scene lies a truth too complex to explain in a single cut. And maybe, just maybe, that's the magic. Because in Tinseltown, the most powerful stories aren't the ones with answers. They're the ones that make us ask, are you really watching the movie? Or is the movie watching you? Tarantino once called it a killer scene, but he cut it without hesitation. That's the paradox of a master at work, knowing when brilliance needs to be buried for the story's heartbeat to stay alive. The Lance monologue, loved by the crew and cherished by Tarantino himself, didn't make the final cut of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was raw, intense, hilarious, everything fans would salivate over, but it slowed the rhythm. And in Tarantino's world, rhythm is king. That ruthless decision echoes all the way back to Reservoir Dogs, when Harvey Keitel gave him a piece of advice that became gospel: kill your darling. Since then, no matter how electrifying a scene was, if it disrupted the pace, it vanished. He once slashed Django Unchained by a full 90 minutes. This wasn't about trimming fat, it was about slicing through gold to keep the engine running. But even gold leaves a ghost behind. That's what happened with the mysterious, haunting figure in Pulp Fiction. Tarantino later revealed that the Gimp had a deeply disturbing backstory. Originally written as a hitchhiker picked up and slowly broken over 7 years, the character was once human, then transformed into something tragically voiceless. They even filmed the extended version, showing the Gimp's gradual descent into captivity. His spirit extinguished piece by piece, but Tarantino made the cold call to cut it all. Why? Because suggestion is stronger than explanation. And here's the part that few knew. When Butch knocks the Gimp out, he doesn't get back up. Not because of the punch, but because he was hanging by a rope. When he passed out, the rope tightened. That moment, meant to be liberation, became his final breath. It's those tragic echoes that keep Pulp Fiction crawling under people's skin decades later. Tarantino always had an eye for casting unconventional brilliance. Like Angela Jones, most viewers barely remember Esmeralda, the cab driver from Pulp Fiction. But in a deleted scene, she was so much more than a quirky face behind the wheel. She became the moral counterpoint to Butch. The version that never made it to theaters showed her sharing a story about death in her Colombian culture. Not as an ending, but a transition. That monologue added layers to the film that only hardcore fans have imagined. She wasn't a throwaway character. She was a philosophical mirror. When she told Butch that names and death are the two things all humans share, it rattled him. And then came the line that stayed with Tarantino for years. Violence is the most honest thing humans do. It turned a cab ride into a confessional booth, with Butch revealing he felt nothing after killing Floyd. Nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just emptiness. That cold void said more about his upbringing than 1,000 punchlines could. His father died in a prison camp. Violence wasn't a choice for him, it was inheritance. In 2021, Tarantino stirred controversy again, this time by embracing the digital frontier. He announced he'd sell unseen Pulp Fiction scenes as NFT. That meant those buried moments, like the philosophical cab ride, would resurface as private, collectible treasure. But Miramax wasn't thrilled. The studio sued him, arguing the rights weren't his to monetize. The courtroom drama mirrored the very themes Tarantino explored on screen: control, ownership, legacy. The case became a battle not just over footage, but over who gets to decide what's canon and what's collectible. But while Tarantino was busy battling over deleted scenes, his financial footprint was building a legacy of its own. With an estimated current net worth hovering around $130 million and projections pushing that past $160 million in the next decade, his business savvy is as razor-sharp as his dialogue. His real estate empire spans both coasts. In Los Angeles, he owns a Mediterranean-style villa in the Hollywood Hills, worth over $9 million. In Tel Aviv, he shares a penthouse with wife Daniela Pick, a sleek modern marvel valued at $7.5 million. His preference for privacy is reflected in his choices. No flashy estate, just carefully curated retreat. But he still enjoys the perks. A limited edition Lamborghini Aventador, known for its brutal power and stealth finish, and a collection of high-end watches, including a rare Patek Philippe Nautilus, quietly worth more than $300,000. Tarantino's jet-set lifestyle includes access to a Gulfstream G550, often chartered, but rumored to be partially owned through a holding group, a move that minimizes personal liability while maximizing luxury. His business mind isn't just in filmmaking. He's invested in boutique cinema, partnered on an LA-based distribution label, and explored rare memorabilia markets where he's both collector and consultant. These moves aren't impulsive, they're calculated, each one building a moat around his wealth. He's reportedly taken out expansive insurance policies, covering not only his properties and health, but his film script, protecting intellectual property in an age of rampant leaks. That's next-level foresight. What can be learned from the man who cut perfection for pace, who abandoned clarity for impact, who chose ambiguity over exposition? Tarantino teaches that power lies not in saying everything, but in knowing what not to say. Financially, he built wealth not by racing toward flashy purchases, but by owning his niche and expanding slowly, methodically. His career has shown how choosing long-term value over short-term noise builds a fortress. He didn't try to chase trends. He created his own lane and let Hollywood come to him. The most powerful takeaway? Know your rhythm. Whether it's in storytelling or investing, the beat matters. Cut what doesn't serve your vision, even if it shines. Because if Tarantino had kept every brilliant scene, Pulp Fiction would have lost its punch. If he had followed the crowd instead of his gut, his net worth wouldn't be climbing. The man is living proof that ruthless self-editing, whether on film or in finance, is the difference between noise and legacy. And there you have it, the untold stories behind Pulp Fiction, the bold moves that made it iconic, and the silent genius of both Quentin Tarantino and Bruce Willis. From scenes that never saw daylight to the wild ride of NFTs and real estate empires in paradise, this film wasn't just a movie. It was a cultural shift. Who knew that a deleted monologue, a cab ride, and a dead gimp could say so much by saying so little? And Bruce, the man didn't just dodge bullets on screen. He redefined how movies get made off screen. That's the kind of legacy you don't just watch, you feel. If you enjoyed peeling back these Hollywood layers with us, go ahead, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite deleted scene or theory, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. We've got more cinematic secrets, behind-the-scenes drama, and celebrity twists coming your way. Because here's the truth. In Hollywood, what's left on the cutting room floor sometimes cuts the deepest. And Bruce, he didn't just survive Pulp Fiction, he made it unforgettable. See you in the next one, storyteller.